Welcome to a special holiday episode of Disguise Coverage. I am Anthony, your host here on Disguise Coverage. But if you notice, I guess if you're not watching the video stream, you won't notice, but you'll hear in a second. I'm not alone on this episode. We have a bit of a super show this week on Disguise Coverage in celebration of the holidays and the Christmas spirit and the coming new year, and also in partial celebration of the Buffalo Bills winning the AFC East for the first time since 1995. That is right. Lots of excitement there. We decided to get multiple faces of the Cover One team together here on this episode. So again, you have me, Anthony, your regular host here on Disguise Coverage. You've also got Sterling and Anthony Romeo from the Hoof podcast. And you've got Greg Thompson from the Cover One podcast. So we've got multiple pieces, multiple faces, lots of great content coming at you from multiple angles. How we doing tonight, fellas?
I'm doing great, man. It's a good time to be alive.
Exciting. I mean, you got the two celebrities on the bottom, so we're just fill-ins, right?
I was gonna say after Anthony, after you saw Sean McDermott,
I was just hanging out with Coach McDermott.
You're just basically right there.
Yeah, incredible moment. It was awesome.
Yeah, honestly, that had to be really cool. That had to be really, really cool.
None of us expected them to stop or anything.
Yeah, or McDermott to come out to the door and hang out and wave to you guys.
Literally right in front of me. That video I posted on Twitter is my genuine reaction to, holy crap, he just actually came out in front of us, right in front of me, and went and gave us
I love that he genuinely digs the fan reaction. It's not you can tell he genuinely likes, he loves the fan reaction to stuff. I dig that.
It's awesome. It just endears him even more to us as fans. Because obviously we want to win after being stuck in obscurity for so long, but to be able to win, but also feel a good way about the Bills, even all the corny or cheesier things, like seeing the snowball fight and buying Chad Hall the truck and the 12 Days of Christmas thing and McDermott getting off the bus, just that emotional connection. That's because you want to be able to feel good about the people you root for. I don't want to be a Chiefs fan and have to root for Tyreek Hill, but I'd rather be a Bills fan and be able to root for the good guys of the Bills. That's a cool thing. And we recognize that people aren't always how you want them to be, but we have a little bit of that with the Bills, and that's a really cool thing to have.
Yeah, so the only thing, Anthony, that I would add to that, I didn't see anyone try to run up and do a TikTok dance in front of Sean McDermott. That would have been a logical thing to do, don't you think?
Yeah, right.
Missed the opportunities. I would say, Anthony, that's on you, man. Why no TikTok dance?
Right. Should have jumped right in front of the bus and just started.
Yeah, right.
You should have asked Juju to come out there.
Stupid Juju and his stupid touchdown dance. I loved watching him getting blown up against the Bengals, though. That was a fun thing.
So I don't know anything about TikTok. I don't understand how it works. But that stupid "Oh No" song that people use all the time, the girl who put that together with him dancing, and then the "Oh No" as he got hit, and the "Oh No" as he fought, I was rolling watching that. So whatever trend that is, that was funny.
Okay, so, and I agree. And the funniest part about that is the video where they show the little stick figure with the stick poking him. Dog.
Get up. Come on.
My man is in a coma down there, dude.
Come on, dance.
Dance now. And it was just so... You can't do those type of things, that's pulling off a big celebration after a score or something in the middle of the game. You need to back that up 100% of the time going forward. Because the first time you don't, everybody's going to be at your throat for it.
Yeah.
Well, you can pull that off. Randy Moss T.O. all day.
Oh, yeah, fair. But not Juju Smith-Schuster.
Well, and even beyond that, I can dig it if you're playing well and things are going on, but when your teammates are being asked about it in pressers, come on, man. You're obviously taking away from this for your own, shine. Whatever. I'm glad we don't have those people. I'm glad we don't have that going on.
For real.
Well, that gets us into our first topic, which is just pure Juju Smith-Schuster dance analysis. I know the fans have been clamoring for it. Everybody wants to know. No, just kidding. So, first thing to get into on this episode, I mentioned it briefly in the intro. The Buffalo Bills have won the AFC East for the first time since 1995. I hope that's not news to anyone watching or listening, because if that would be, I would be like, where have you been?
I, for one, am shocked.
I know. It's It's good to see. It's good to have. And us here at Cover One, I think we are known for a large amount of what we do for being objective analysts of the game, analysts of the Bills, and always having that objective analyst first practicality mindset and logistical standpoint when it comes to the Bills. But
And also Anthony.
right, I was going to say, and also the man in the suit.
And also Anthony.
Yeah.
Hey, we'll see though. I mean, I hear you.
Well, I think you had the closest prediction to the game score on Saturday.
Absolutely, I knew it was. I said 51-9 was my score prediction, and it should have been higher than that.
Pretty dang close. Yeah, I watched 69 points. I don't know about anybody else. I watched it be scored. I watched 69 points get scored on my TV.
Hey, first of all, hold on. Let me
this
interject here.
team, we knew this team well. Broncos, obviously, that's our home, Denver. So I mean, this team was not one to be afraid of.
Listen, for your own good, you guys don't start gassing Anthony up out there because the suit's gonna turn on fire, and his face is gonna get red, and he's gonna start going nuts. So you better watch what you say down there, Greg.
Somebody already Vito commented, Anthony not objective, he's just been the most right.
You know what? But there is a thing. I think what you just started to say, Anthony, is what I connected to this week after we won, or even before the game, because becoming a talking head for the Bills changes things, right? I mean, you do try to be objective. Before this, I would have told you anytime, anywhere, my team will beat your team. No matter how much the Bills sucked over the last 20 years, as a fan, I said, my team's going to win against your team on this Sunday. No, even if I didn't believe it in my whole soul because I knew that my quarterback was trash at the time, I still was the guy who said, as a fan, that's what you do. You root for your team. You truly say my team's going to win. But coming into this season and even last season, it's just different. It feels totally different because this team is special. This team, and you can objectively say in the preseason, this team is a Super Bowl contender, and they are now. And now it's like, yeah, that's what we saw. We knew this roster. That's what this team has become.
And you've been proven right. And here we are. We have the Bills winning the AFC East, getting a home playoff game, even though there's maybe going to be some fans, but maybe not. But all that matters, home game, division title, first time since 95. And although we are objective and analysts, and we do have to balance and walk that line, like Anthony mentioned, from a pure fan perspective, let's take off the objective hats and the analyst hats, just from a pure fan perspective. Obviously, what got us into this was our love for the Buffalo Bills from a fan's perspective at whatever age it started at. So from a pure fandom perspective, and Sterling, we'll start with you. What does the Bills winning the AFC East title this year mean to you from a pure fandom perspective and from a pure love of the Bills perspective?
Well, first of all, I'm gonna congrats you for picking me first. I think that seems fitting right now.
You got to lead with with the best dude, with the face of everything. I do what I gotta do.
Man. Hey, I appreciate the love. No, you know what, dude? I've been a fan of the Bills since 1989. And you know how many barbershops I've been into when they talk football and I say I'm a Bills fan? And it's like those moments where you just like get a little lower in your seat because you already know what's coming. 4 Super Bowls, bro. Yeah, and so now it's like, yo, they don't even know what to say now. They be like, yeah, I mean, yeah, they good, dog. They good, dog.
That's it.
You right, dog. Yeah, man. I was like, yeah, I've been here since '89, but whatever, just chilling. So it feels good. Like it feels good to be able to have a team like a real quarterback, not a rental quarterback, like Jeff Toole. Like, why? Thad Lewis, great. Like for 2 seconds. It's just good to have it's like being in a rec league and you're the old guy and you get the ringer that's like 24 right out of college and he's like just draining. And you're like, yeah, I just passed to you and I don't care about scoring because you're going to hit all the points. That's what it's like being a Bills fan right now. We got a ringer.
That's pretty good.
Different perspective, huh?
Nah, I dig it. And so I love the feeling that you get in genuine confidence. Like Anthony touched on it earlier, where I could talk myself into all kinds of things. I've been doing it my entire life. Yeah, I could talk myself into anything of how something's possible and how it could work out. Going in and being like, sitting there when the Bills had that comical stretch of 4 straight touchdowns and they had 1st and goal from the 30 and my mom sitting next to me and I was like, meh, they're still going to score. And I just, like, I didn't say it in a like hopeful, like weird way. Like I just said it instinctually that like, no, they're still going to score. Like, it's not that big a deal. Like from the 30-yard, like you say we get 3 tries from the 30-yard line. That's fine. Like that's fine. So from a family standpoint, I grew up in a enormously Bills heavy family in Western New York. I'm down in the southern tier, so I'm a little bit further south from Buffalo where I grew up. But like everyone, like every Sunday, that's what we did. We would either go at one side of the family's house and watch, or the others, and have big bowl of pasta and spaghetti and meatballs and watch the game. And that's just what we did every single Sunday. So going back, and we were doing our Christmas this weekend, but I went back early so that I could go watch the game with everybody. And I literally sat there with my mom, my dad, my grandma, my sister, my nephews, my kids, every single person in Bills gear, flags all around, everybody there, and getting to watch them win the division for the first time in 25 years with all the people that I grew to love this team because of, was honestly like really moving. Like, it was really special to be able to do that and to be able to just experience such a fun, easy game that they just kept pouring it on. It was awesome. It was such a cool experience to be able to do. It was one of the first times I didn't like live tweet the game through each play or do the analysis. I just sat there and just enjoyed it with my family, and it was awesome. Like, it was such a fun experience, and I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah, that's incredible, and it parallels my story pretty well, actually, because I'd like to think that, I have a son who's due February 1st, my first. Yeah, I'd like to think that I'm building that situation that Greg just described, right? I'm going to be the grandpa on the couch with the Bills fans all around him. So I hope one day, because the way I grew up, my uncle was a Bills fan, and is a Bills fan still. He lives in the Miami area now. And my oldest brother, Adam, became a Bills fan because of my uncle. And they raised me a Bills fan, and it's literally the first memories I have in my life are watching Bills games and watching football and being a Bills fan. And that's just, it's literally, as I said on our show, when people meet me and get to know me, my friends at work, people, whatever, it's one of the first 3 things they'll describe to you about me is, oh yeah, he's a scientist. Yeah, he's a great guy or whatever. And he's a Bills fan, like, because they just know.
It's like a core quality.
Yes, exactly. And just to give you the perspective of me growing up, those 4 Super Bowls, I have 2 brothers who are Giants fans. I have a brother and a sister who are Cowboys fans. My mother was a Washington football team fan. So it's tough because they pounded me for years, and through all the bad years, like, oh yeah, 4 Super Bowls, and lost to every single one of their teams, and over again. And I lived in Syracuse, New York, and I remember those bad years. If I'm not the most passionate and ferocious fan you've ever met, I'd like to find one who's more, because, I was that kid who, despite the season being over, knowing your team sucked, it was blacked out on TV in Syracuse, and I'd have to sit next to the radio and listen to the game because I couldn't watch it. And it was frustrating, but I still did it. Why? Because I care about my Buffalo Bills, and I want to know what's going on all the time. And that's, again, through all of those bad years, leading up to Saturday, all of those emotions from all of those years and every situation, it really hit me. And I drove to work that morning because I had to go into lab for a bit. And going in, I was everything. At first, I was like, oh my God, I'm so excited. The Bills are in town. And then I'm frustrated. I can't go. They're right in my backyard, and they're here. And it's this huge game, and I can't be there. And then Renegade came on the radio, and I'm like rocking out because I'm like, yes. And I got so excited, and then just the emotion of, wow, this is really happening for us as Bills fans. This is, and like Greg alluded to too, it was a game that I felt confident we were going to control and dominate. I wasn't worried about losing. It was just the excitement of, holy cow, this is really happening for us. After 25 years, we've won the division, and I can't believe it. And we've earned it, and all the things we've been through to get here. And these guys, like the 2 on the sign behind me, Allen and Diggs, and the whole entire team, these are guys worth rooting for. And it just was such an emotional thing for me. Unfortunately, I had to watch the game alone at home with my wife, just me and her. She's not a huge football fan, but she certainly cheers for the Bills. And it was challenging to not be with friends and not have that moment that Greg had, with just be able
I
to
know,
embrace
man. I'm
all
jealous.
those people because they've been through all of this. All of us
Yeah.
know, right? The people who know what it means to be a Bills fan and go through this. All of my sidebar crew that I usually watch the game with every Sunday and that I've known for all of these years and really bonded with and are some of my best friends. And I just wanted to embrace them. And, you know, to not have that moment was tough. But for me, that moment was getting to go to the stadium and celebrate with those people outside who most of whom I had never met here in Denver and having Sean McDermott stop and wow, what a moment. So that really capped it off for me.
Can I add something to that though? Because like you hit on something that's very cool. It's like in a pandemic year, like as Bills fans, we are so accustomed to getting our heart ripped out of our chests. The fact that the football gods, if there are any, right, said, you know what?
There are. Don't anger them. How dare you? Don't outright acknowledge their presence.
Right. Hey, that you guys are going to be good this year, and you're going to be what a great way to cap off a terrible year for so many people. That your team is actually good, but not only are they good on one side of the ball, but they're kind of good on both sides of the ball. And you have a quarterback that people are liking. That's probably going to be on the Madden cover. Whatever you think of Madden. I mean, when I saw Peyton Hillis, I was like, "There's got to be a Buffalo Bill that's going to grace the cover
somehow, some way,
right?" But yeah, dude, it's like icing on the cake, man. It definitely lifted my spirit, dude. I can't even deny it. Can't deny it.
It's such a cool thing because of all the pieces, and I was pulling up comments that kind of tied into everyone's stories and anecdotal references here, and it's the same thing for me. You know, growing up, I was just a real tiny baby. I say it all the time. A tiny baby during the 4 straight Super Bowl losses. I don't know how I would have handled them if I had the consciousness I do now. And same thing as Greg, you and your family, like growing up in Western New York, and everybody gets together on Sundays and watches the Bills. And I would always hear the story of, you know, my uncle and my dad who went to the Bills-Oilers playoff game and left at halftime and then tried to get back into the stadium when the Bills started to come back, and they couldn't get back into the stadium, and everybody in the family like always rips them and lets them know, like, oh, remember when you guys quit on the Bills and they completed the greatest comeback ever. All those things that tie you to the team, and going through and seeing just Sterling, you mentioned it, like we're accustomed to having our hearts ripped out just year after year in the most grueling and gut-wrenching of fashions, and you finally get to a place where you're like, I don't know when we're ever going to be good again. When are we going to win a playoff game? When are we going to win a division? When are we going to finally have some semblance of an offense or quarterback or head coaching? And to have these things click and to have these pieces come together. And up until this past week, I've lived in New York City for the last 9 years, and being a Bills fan is a massive identifier for me and my circle of friends and boys, and everybody there is either a massive Giants or Jets fan, and I am just low-hanging fruit for everyone all the time. They're like, oh, the 4 straight Super Bowls, ha, ha, ha. Nathan Peterman, ha, ha, ha. Didn't you guys play on Monday night and, like, some dude named Leotis McKelvin, like, dropped the ball in a terrible way, and then didn't, like, a bunch of your fans, like, set his lawn on fire because he dropped that ball? Remember, didn't you guys have a chance to get into the game, the playoffs against the Steelers? You played their backups and they beat you in week 17. Ha, ha, ha. Oh, I can never escape any of it. And to finally have a team that you can be proud of for multiple reasons that aren't on-field related, and then to have the on-field product match it, it's such an awesome thing. And from a pure fandom perspective, I'm still kind of in shock. Like I've said it several times on Twitter, and I've said it here on the show. I didn't know when the Bills were going to be good. Like every time we'd get a new head coach, it was like, well, I hope this guy's the one. And I had a good feeling about McDermott, but I also drank a little bit of the Rex Ryan Kool-Aid, and I thought he was going to be good. Yeah. And you never know what you're going to have. And with each regime change and each quarterback change, you're hoping that, well, that's a cool comment from Josh Clark there. With each change, you're hoping, like, I hope this guy's the guy. I hope this coach is the dude. I hope this QB is the next QB for the future. And then after like a year and a half, you're like, nope, EJ Manuel was bad, just like I thought he was. We got to start all over again.
The other piece that, you know, I didn't bring up here, but I'm sure all of us have experienced is now you have the people who know nothing about football, or, you know, the friends and family who don't know football, or the ones who know you but know that you're – And they're texting you, say, "Wow, the Bills are good. Hey, congrats on your Bills. Hey, you must be excited for your team." It's like
so many weird like Zoom messages when I log into my work computer on Mondays, and so many text messages from people I haven't talked to in forever, or like Facebook messages and weird stuff. I'm like, oh yeah, no, that's pretty awesome. Like there are so many people that you talked about, like your defining character trait. There are so many people that know me as, oh, Greg the big Bills fan. Like that's like the thing that they remember about me. So yeah, it's been kind of fun.
The people that that are on the like fringes of your like friend circle or family circles and are come up like, so like you must be pretty excited about the Bills, huh? And I'm like, I haven't spoken to you in like 2.5 months, but yes, I am very
yes. If you'd like to talk about it, we can.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, and it's fun to see where they are now. And from an emotional standpoint, it's great. I think we can all concur and attest to that the like emotional just significance of it for us, for our families, for the connection and the nostalgia of like growing up and where we're hopefully going. It's just so awesome. And it's a good time to be a Bills fan finally. And we haven't been able to say that for basically my entire like fandom. My defining moments of the Bills were, I think the first game I ever really, really remember was the playoff loss to the Jags with Natron Means, where we lost at home. I think it was Kelly's last game.
Oh man.
Yeah, and then that killed me. And then, Music City Miracle. So it's always been terribleness for me. So I'm glad we can finally have some things to be happy about.
The fact that you named a giant fullback as a running back, and his name he
was tailback. He was
but he wasn't.
Fullback. He's
but he wasn't.
Your name is Natron. Big Nate.
he had the big offensive guard shoulder pads and was just massive. Yeah. And I remember still thinking in that game, again, I was like little, but I was like, oh, like they're an expansion team. Like they can't beat us. And then we lost. And I was just like, well, this is everything that I never wanted my life to be. And here I am. But now that the Bills have won the AFC East, we have a changing of the guard, as you can see on the video screen. If you're listening to the audio-only version, it says changing of the guard on the screen because we have a topic change. So the Bills have won the AFC East and have ended the Patriots' 1,740 consecutive wins for the AFC East. We've ended that. Bills get a home playoff game. And from the practicality standpoint, we're going to get into the playoff seeding in a little bit. But, and Greg, here, we'll start with you. With the Bills winning this year, Pats are done for now, but Miami looks good and they're young. The Jets are rebuilding. The Pats are going to have to do some sort of rebuild. Is this a permanent changing of the guard, and what does the future of the AFC East hold going forward?
So, I'll give a little bit to temper expectations first. There's a lot of things that go into a special season. Health is a huge one. The San Francisco 49ers were in the Super Bowl last year, came into this year with a really talented roster, got ravaged. They're not going to make the playoffs. That stuff happens. Are we going to go 13-3 every year and win the division every year and now just take over for what the Patriots did for the next 20 years? Most math would say no, that's probably not what's going to happen. Now, the good news is sustainability in the NFL is from leadership. Sustainability is because you have stable, good leadership. Well, we have our GM extended for 5 more seasons after this year. We have our head coach extended for 5 more years after this year. We are about to extend our quarterback for some period of time of 4 to 10 years that will be, I predict, announced here in the next couple months. When you have that, everything else has a pretty high likelihood of being good. So I think the Bills are going to be good for a decade. I think they're going to be good for the rest of the 2020s. Now, I don't predict that we win 9 straight division championships. I don't predict that we just go on some back-to-back historic run that just the AFC East now just only has historic dominance. But they're going to be really, really good. So I grew up in Kelly versus Marino rivalry. I want that. I want there to be fun, knockdown, drag out games. I like that the Patriots are now welcome back to reality. It's not just this storybook thing that, oh, you have crazy injuries and all kinds of shit go wrong, and all of a sudden, it's fine. We just have, these two guys that make everything okay. So sadly, I also need to warn Bills fans, the Patriots aren't going to suck forever. That they have cap space. They're not going to whiff on every draft pick. They're just going to go back to reality. That now, if you have weird injuries or bad quarterback play, hey, guess what? Your season sucks. Welcome to real life. They're also going to have some bounce back seasons and some good years. And Belichick's still a great football mind. So they're the fact that they're 6-8 right now, honestly, is commendable of a job by him as any of the jobs he's done in recent history. But the Bills are the best team in the AFC East. The Bills have the best quarterback in the AFC East. The Bills have, I'll say, one of the best coaches, and I think within the next 2 or 3 years when Belichick retires, the best coach in the AFC East, and they have the best GM in the AFC East. All those things mean life's going to be pretty good. I think that we're set up for a really nice stretch here, and I think it's okay for Bills fans to have higher expectations and to expect their team to be good, and that's awesome to say out loud.
You bring up some great points there. And can we just stop for a second and remember back in the preseason when there were polls that said Josh Allen was the 4th, maybe the 5th best QB in this division? In the division, not in the NFL, in the division. I mean, those were just so – and we did a whole thing on our show at the time tearing that apart because it was just a horrible take. But obviously, what we know came to fruition, and now everybody knows Josh Allen is legitimate. But when it comes to long-term health, I think this marries well to our last segment because our last segment was all about the emotion and the feeling and what it means for Bills fan to win the division. 3 years from now, it's nothing. It literally will mean nothing to win the division. Congrats, you're in the playoffs. That's what it means. It means nothing else, right? Like you did what you had to do, what is expected of you, period. And I think this division is going to still be competitive. We still have the Dolphins, who are basically the Bills 2.0. They're a year behind us, right? So next year they could be 10-6 in this position, right? So it wouldn't surprise me if this becomes a Bills-Dolphins rivalry division. Tua still has a lot of growing up to do, and certainly the Bills are the favorites no matter what coming into the next year and the year after that. I'd still say confidently, unless Tua turns into a superstar before then, but I don't see that happening. So the Bills are going to be expected to win the division. Dolphins are going to be contending. The Patriots, for me, yes, they're still going to be a viable team, but they need to totally scrap and rebuild, and I don't know that they are planning to do that yet. And their defense is still good, and when they get those guys who weren't here for the COVID season back, they're going to be competitive again. But they're certainly not going to have all the perks of people signing there for pennies on the dollar because they want to win and knowing that it's an easy division and all of that. So,
but by the way, that's going to be a really nice sneaky perk over the next couple of years. Like now we're going to get the fun, value signings of the guys trying to hang on for a year and be like, oh, Josh Allen looks fun to play with. Let's go do that. Yeah, this is going to be so fun.
How many guys did we see that were like, oh, the Bills need this position and they should go sign this guy. And then that guy signs for pennies on the dollar in New England. And you're like, what the hell? The Bills would have offered him 3 times that, but they knew they wanted to contend for it.
It's going to be great. It's going to be so
now
nice.
That team is Buffalo. Exactly. And I just see it. I could see us winning the division at least 4 out of the next 5 years. You got to expect, like Greg said, too, bumps in the road. Things happen. If injuries happen, hey, if things don't work out, if the Dolphins come out on fire and the Bills don't do what they're supposed to do, I still expect this team to make the playoffs every year now. That's an expectation. No longer oh, wow, that's great. No, that's the expectation. The minimum is make the playoffs. And if that's
a season where they don't make the playoffs now means something happened. Something went wrong.
Right. Yes. Totally bad. Went wrong. Yes. And that's why I said 4 out of 5 years, I'd say the Bills will win this division and probably continue to be a dominant team after that for at least the foreseeable future with the guys we have, with Josh Allen, with the leadership, as Greg said. But yeah, it's going to be competitive, hopefully, to keep it fun. But the Bills are now the favorites. It's totally changed.
I like that. Sterling, what do you think? Future AFC East?
Yeah, I mean, you guys kind of hit on it early. I think stability is the big one. I mean, we finally have a vision There hasn't been anything since the 90s where we've had an actual vision. Like if you were to ask yourself, okay, what are the Bills going to do? You'd be like, I don't know. Like we just had no clue. But now we all kind of know what to expect going into the offseason, typically, right? We kind of have a good idea. This is the first GM or brain trust that you would say where from a draft perspective, you got to like, I see what kind of players that like the kind of players that they're bringing in. Like Doug Whaley, we didn't know what we were getting. Like you go to the store, I want Golden Grams. I don't want the marshmallows and the mystery box. Like we know exactly what we're looking for. And so I think it's huge. But I think the main important key to all this is how well are we going to draft? That is the key. I mean, New England, they haven't drafted great. It's proven, right? But they've had the best quarterback of all time to hide a lot of the mask and stuff. Josh Allen is, I don't know, we don't know his ceiling and how good he's going to be. But if the Bills don't draft or continue to draft well, we're going to have some issues. Kind of like you're going to have a wasted quarterback like Aaron Rodgers is in Green Bay. Like he should have more than a title, right? So we have to put ourselves in position to accumulate stack wins, stack foundational pieces to where we look back in 4 or 5 years and say, holy hell, our team is a lot better now than it was back then. And we don't have the cap space because we had to pay Josh Allen a $40 million contract a year, right? So that's, to me, that's what I'm looking for the most. Yeah, I think the Bills can win it for the next 7 to 10 years, division. Like 7 out of 10, I really do think they'll win it. I mean, you break them down. Okay, so, you know, the Patriots, you got to take your medicine at some point. And I don't think that they're going to hit the full rebuild until Belichick's gone. I think they're going to try to John Elway their way through this. You know, let's get the veteran quarterback. Let's do this. Let's do that. But it's not going to work. History's shown that you may get lucky once, but that's not going to be a recipe for success long term. And then you have the Dolphins. Like, honestly, I'll be honest. Is Tua as good as he's going to be? Because the Tua that I saw at Alabama is the same Tua that I see here, and I don't know how much better he's going to get, right? So that's something to evaluate. And then you look at the Jets. Well, speechless.
None of us, Greg and I didn't even acknowledge that the Jets.
Right.
I do kind of just glaze over. Now, quick side note: I'm not sad that they're not going to get Trevor Lawrence. Because if they have any semblance of a chance of getting that figured out, a generational quarterback is the one way to do that. So I don't care about any of the rest of the guys. You could tell me Zach Wilson looked awesome the other night, or hey, I think Justin Fields is the thing. That's fine. He ain't Trevor Lawrence. So they're just going to be like any other crapshoot quarterback that anybody else could get. Best of luck.
Well, so I'll challenge you on that, Greg. Let's tone it down on the expectation with the Jets because they could, like the Jaguars, could get hot. Okay, and they could knock somebody out, and then we're effed.
If the Jags beat the Bears tomorrow and Trubisky gives the Jets back Trevor Lawrence, I'm going to be so mad.
Let's just pump the brakes here. We love you. We love you. Okay,
Trevor Lawrence. Don't do that.
Y'all ever seen Trading Spaces?
Oh yeah,
that's what we're in, dude. Think about it. Look, we are now the Patriots, right? Nobody wants to take the Jets chick home. Like,
that's so great.
We just did Trading Spaces in the AFC.
That's so great. Real quick aside, Anthony. So when Sterling made the comment earlier about Doug Whaley in the groceries, it just gave me the funniest analogy. Like he's the dude who would come home with this like premium cut of tuna by like a high-end sushi chef and some artisanal tomato sauce and these really good marshmallows and be like, dude, they're all so good. This is so good. I got this fantastic tuna and this artisanal tomato sauce and these really good marshmallows. Here you go, man. Make a killer meal. But you realize like none of these things go together, right? Like I get they're all good individually and like it was probably a good value but like you can't do a thing with this.
I can't make a meal out of this, sir.
Yeah. As soon as you said that, like it started going through my head.
How many Kool-Aid packs are you going to mix in that?
Seriously, exactly. It's just such a perfect idea that now you talk about having a plan. Like Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane are the kind of guys who they have like flowcharts and 400-line process maps of like exactly what might happen on July 4th, 2026. And like it's unbelievable to have people like that in charge. It's so reassuring.
That's the biggest thing for me in having that, like we've all hit on it in different points. that stability and finally having people at the helm of the ship that we can feel confident in driving the ship. I'm really intrigued with the AFC East because there's so many, and maybe it's just partial paranoia in me and being a Bills fan, knowing that I can never feel confident and secure in anything in my life. But so many things hit the Pats this year, losing Brady, COVID offseason, a lot of opt-outs. You can make a case that they had a lot of outlying factors that could have potentially hindered success they had. Fair. You've got Miami, who had a really good year last year, all things considered. They basically had a fire sale, and then Brian Flores found a way to the opposite of Doug Whaley buying artisanal tomato sauce and tuna. Brian Flores was buying like dollar steaks and turning in like really quality dinners.
Like
out of it.
Ramen and dollar ribeyes and like turn it into a thing.
And you're like, oh my God, this is delicious. I love the Teddy Graham Golden Graham crust that you put on this ribeye. It's the most delicious thing I've ever had in my life. And the jury's still out a little bit on Tua. I'll give him, he's a rookie who still might develop, but they've got some quality pieces. And then you've got the Jets. I don't want to comment on the Jets right now. And then you've got the Bills, who look to be, as we've all hit, and we've talked about cap things, we've talked about Allen, and there's that window. Sterling spoke about it a little with what the Packers have had with Rodgers, but we've seen that other than the Pats, and I guess the Falcons really, when they went to the Super Bowl with Matt Ryan, the blueprint to a degree for NFL success has been get a good young QB, surround him with talent while he's on that rookie QB contract, and try and get your ring within that 4 to 5 years if he was a first rounder, get that opt-in. Because once you have to pay him, you have such a significant amount of cap that has to go to that QB, and it becomes hard. Again, to Sterling's example with Aaron Rodgers, all of a sudden it's like, well, I hope this dude can put the team on his back. And in order to properly surround him with talent, you have to consistently draft well, because you have to find ways to keep the cupboard stocked up with quality pieces that are also somewhat affordable, which the draft does. And I trust Bean and McDermott in the draft. I also trust them within their flow charts and their Excel documents of possible trades and free agency acquisitions. And also the aspect we mentioned earlier with, perhaps vets towards the end of their career who still have something to offer. They want to take a chance at a championship, and maybe we got guys jumping on the team like every LeBron Cavaliers team has had for the last, several years, where you had these vets who are just like, well, I want a chance for a title, or dudes who are jumping to the Warriors and seeing what they can get out of it. It's really interesting to see, because on the one hand, I feel like the Bills are set up for success long term, and I still think they are. But the rest of the AFC East, there's a lot of wild card aspects to it, and seeing where we go is a really interesting thing.
Yeah, it could be interesting to see their ceiling in some of those scenarios, specifically Miami. Miami, when you talk about the number of assets they put together, it hasn't panned out phenomenally this year, but they're 9-5 with a rookie quarterback plus journeyman quarterbacks. I mean, things are going pretty well. I think that they overpaid for some of their free agents, but they didn't bomb. You talk about, is Shaq Lawson playing at a $10 million plus level? Probably not, but he's playing pretty well.
That's why we didn't sign him.
Yeah, is Kyle Van Noy a game-changing linebacker? No, but he's playing pretty well. Byron Jones, is he a lockdown corner? No. Is he playing at one point the highest paid cornerback in league history? No, but he's starting caliber. So at some point, some of those things may become an issue. It gives me a little glimmer of hope that their eye for talent and value analysis isn't perfect. Yeah. Same thing. They had a ton of draft picks. I think they did okay. I don't know that they've hit grand slams on many of the draft picks. But they have more coming. They have more cap space coming. They have more draft picks coming. All it would take is for them to have one of those, that Colts 2018 draft or that Saints 2017 draft. All it would take is them having a big hit in a couple of those. They have enough other pieces around that they could be a challenge, but it's all upside and ceiling for them, not anything to be expected.
That's with Miami. That's what it's like throwing. I said this past offseason. They have so many darts in their hand. At this point, they're just closing their eyes and winging them at the board, because they know
you're bound to hit one.
Greg said, you get one that sticks in the board 1 year, then the next year, and that's all it takes. Now you've got 3 key players that you drafted in the first or second round or whatever And when you pile up that many draft picks, it's harder to screw up that situation than it is to succeed in that situation at this point. And obviously, it all hinders on your quarterback, which they are investing into us. So if it doesn't work out with him, it doesn't matter how good the rest of the team is. It's not going to work out for the team. So
speaking of whiffs on draft day, I already copped to it in the chat. I was a Rosen over Allen guy. I was also a guy who this draft I was begging for Miami to take a swing on Herbert because I didn't want them to get Tua. God, I'm kind of happy they didn't do that. I'm kind of happy they didn't end up with Herbert because he looks good.
We need our guy Eric on the show for this because he was the Allen guy. I mean, he was over the moon for Josh Allen. Yeah. He knew Josh Allen was going to be this before any of us did. Let's put it that way.
Good for him.
That's who we wanted. That's who we got.
Here's my question for the Bills and for you guys to just think about. How well are the Bills going to adjust? And what I mean by that is when you look at the dynasty that the Patriots had and you look at the other teams in the division, we were all trying to chase New England. So a lot of teams, what we did was we invested a lot in the defensive line, right, and edge rushing. So so we got to rush Brady up the middle. That didn't work. Like how are the Bills going to stay ahead, right? Because now you're going to have teams talking about, okay, now we have to stop this dynamic young quarterback, right? So you already seen Brian Flores is already on it. Why they went out in offseason? They had 3 number 1 corners basically on that squad, right? So they're already gearing up to stop Josh Allen. So how are the Bills going to stay ahead of that curve? You're going to need more offensive firepower. Yeah. I think you're going to have to come off the defense a little bit, and you're going to have to invest heavily in the offense. You're going to need X factor players, and we're kind of missing that right now.
I think that's the part where you trust Bean and McDermott at this point to make the right decisions when it comes to free agency, when it comes to the draft. They've proven they can do it 100%, right? And this goes back to speaking of the consistency, right? We're Bills fans, and I'm sure many Bills fans out there, I know many Bills fans out there have said, we need a shutdown corner 2. We all want a strong cornerback number 2. Guess what? It's not happening. You're not going to get it. Period. Why? Because Sean McDermott and Brandon Bean make this defense work with a pasted together cornerback number 2. A linebacker, we know that's a key position on this team. We are going to invest in linebacker no matter what. Offensive line, now that becomes the question of this offseason because like you alluded to, Sterling, the one thing New England was able to do is tell star players who are playing great for that team, see you later. Have fun on the other team. We're going to replace you with the next guy who's ready to go. And that as a balance between drafting the next guy and having him ready, and then also knowing who's available in free agency and saying, look at Darrell Williams, right? Came in, man, signed him for nothing. Now he's a superstar. He's going to get big money. They have to make the decision. Are we going to sign this guy? As Sterling and I have debated on the show already, the Milano versus Williams debate. It's going to, you only have so much money. I feel like the one bump in the road for all the teams was COVID, right? Because McBean really had their plan. They knew down to the penny. I trusted that they knew exactly what they were doing every step of the way. And now COVID is the wrench that's like, oh, crap, we're not going to have that $20 million that we were going to invest in the offensive line this season or whatever it may be. So it's going to be a little bit tighter, a little bit harder for everybody. But I trust that McDermott and Bean will make the right decision. If it's letting Milano walk, bam, they have the next Milano ready to go in the draft, and they're confident in who that guy is already, right? Same thing about knowing the type of guys they draft is character. If somebody has a fatal character flaw or is a cocky player, or if I watch, all I need to watch is like a piece of an interview with a guy, and I'm like, oh, they're never drafting this guy. It doesn't matter. He's not process worthy, right? So it's nice to be
for Sterling's comment, the one thing to cling to with going from the hunter to the hunted is that you got to remember Belichick's pulled that off for 20 years too. Yeah. They literally went through an undefeated season wearing humble pie t-shirts because Belichick would spend every film breakdown telling them why they weren't good enough. Sean McDermott is as good at that as anyone. Yep. He will find flaws in that Broncos game to be able to rake them over the coals in film study, to tell them what they need to do better. He'll find every possible little thing. Some of the people that Bills fans maybe go a little overboard, but that people go nuts about online, the Nick Wrights, the Skip Baylesses. You got to realize he puts that stuff on a rolling, slideshow in the workout rooms and in the meeting rooms, just posting stuff of it. See, doesn't matter how good you guys do, they still don't believe in you. Mm-hmm. So every time you see those idiots giving hot takes, that's just fuel for Sean McDermott to be able to put it there. Yep, didn't matter, guys. Doesn't matter how your best isn't good enough. You still got to give more. You still got to find a way to give more. You still got to dig deeper. He'll always find a way to do that, and that is going to become a valuable strength. To your point, Anthony, about that pivot. We've never seen a brain trust get into the second phase. We've never seen an extension and in a group stay together that now they're going to go from tear it down, build it up, and now how do you pivot into sustain? So people talk about for what you were saying earlier about, do we know what their strategy is? So less so cornerback, linebacker, things like that. People will use that in, we know that Brandon Beane doesn't trade down. Well, we've never seen him in a position in the draft where now we need more assets and we're in this phase of the build.
Yeah.
Now that might become what we obviously know that Brandon Beane doesn't do compensation picks. He just spends a ton of money on the first day of free agency. Well, we've never seen this phase of the build. There's going to be new things that come that we're not sure yet, but I would bet that we get into compensation picks and we get into trade downs and we get into more darts at the board because we need cheap contracts to help make up for the extensions we give out. Those things are coming.
Yeah, we've seen that first Super Saiyan level for Beane and McDermott, but now can you reach Super Saiyan level 2? And we haven't seen that phase yet, to your point. Sorry, I love Dragon Ball Z. I'm a huge fan. And yeah, what does that part of the process look like? Because we've seen a couple comments, I think we've all alluded to it here, the building part that McBean have done has been obviously tremendous and has worked out really well, but that sustainability piece, which we all have faith in, but it'll come in a variety of forms and a variety of factors. And what does that look like? Because there are so many uncharted waters and so many uncharted territories now, because when you go from basically the bottom and build your way up and you are the hunter and you're coming through to use that phrasing and switch to become the hunted, it's a different type of mentality. It's a different type of competition. It's a different type of sustainability in and of itself when you are the target, when you are the team at the top, which we hope the Bills can be. And going within that, as we've spoken about this changing of the guard, for the foreseeable future, however long you want to define foreseeable future, is the AFC East a 2-horse race between the Bills and the Dolphins, or do we need to give the Pats a little more respect or potentially write them off? What do we think? I'll start. Sterling, we'll start with you again.
I don't think it's early enough to declare front runner. I think it's still early. I think we've seen with the Jets, like, you can have all the draft picks in the world, but if you fail to develop, I don't know how well Brian Flores is going to develop his talent. So I don't know. Honestly, I have to see. Give me 2 or 3 years of work of your draft classes, and I can be able to tell, okay, yeah, like, they're going to be trouble. Like I said, I still don't believe Tua. I think Tua is probably going to be as good as he's going to be. He may get a little bit better. That's just my opinion. I don't think he's going to be that great. And then we don't know what the hell the Jets are doing. They're probably going to have to flip the whole house over again. But yeah, it's too early for me to name a front runner. I think it's Bills up top, and then the other 3, you just don't know. I mean, a team's fortune can change in a year. Just look at the Saints. I mean, they were looking like Drew Brees, and then they get Kamara and all, and it's like, okay, now they're here. So, I mean, if you strike gold, like Greg was saying, you hit the draft one time and you get like 3 Pro Bowls caliber players, it's going to change the fortunes of your franchise.
Fair enough, Greg. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably the higher probability. It's the more likely outcome. NFL changes so fast in so many different ways.
Week.
Yeah, I mean, hell, it's hard to predict literally week to week, let alone season to season. So, some of the different things that could change and shift. It's not easy for me to see a fast rebuild in New York, but I will say I think Joe Douglas is a smart guy. They have a ton of assets. They didn't whiff on all their picks. That's there's some talent on that team. I think Mekhi Becton is legit. I think Denzel Mims is legit.
Best draft that they've had in years.
Oh yeah.
If you go back 5-6 years and look at their first round picks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Mims
Oh
is
no.
I like
The
Ashton
cupboard's
Davis.
bare.
But
you talk about
away in 3 years.
well, so don't get me wrong. I don't see a path for a quick rebuild, but you talk about they got the two first round picks for Jamal Adams. They have their own picks, which are going to be the number 2 pick in each round. That they have a path to be able to go there.
Sure.
There's a weird, I think Anthony said it well. In the Patriots aren't going to bottom out while Belichick's there. So I think they're going to be in this weird middle range for 3 more years, and then whoever replaces him is going to have to deal with all these band-aided contracts coming along. So, but again, if they, let's say they do hit on some, let's say next year's bargain basement cheap quarterback is Jameis Winston, and somehow Belichick's brain is the guy who can help Jameis harness his talent, and he has 5,000 yards passing and 30 touchdowns, but not 30 interceptions. Let's say, there's going to be a decent quarterback in this carousel next year who doesn't have a team, and I don't know who that is going to be. That could be Marcus Mariota. It could be someone like that. If they hit on the right thing and all those guys come back from COVID and they have actually the most cap space they've had in a long time, they could have a season. I just don't see sustainability in the current model that they're in until they decide to either latch onto somebody or bottom out.
I love what Sterling and Greg just said, because it fits perfectly to the changing of the guard. Right? For decade, or if not more, it was New England's the favorite and the other 3 teams are just going to duke it out for who's going to be in wild card contention, right? And that's exactly what it feels like now, being the Bills. It's like, well, we're the favorite going in now, and the other 3 teams have to get lucky or have to make the most of what they have or have to hit in the draft, and maybe they can contend and become a wild card team too. And I love the second part of that. We talked in the beginning about being Bills fans and all the agony we've been through over the years. Well, the worst part of those years was the Bills never truly sucked. We never went 2-13. We couldn't go a season. We were always 6-10, 7-9, 8.
Hell, Cam Newton should have been our quarterback.
And it's just brutal, right? It's like, and because of that, you're always in anticipation. Every game you think you're going to win, it's like, oh, we're still in the hunt in week 16, but we need 3 teams to lose. And now it's those other teams are going to be like Greg said. I think the Patriots are going to be stuck in this mediocrity phase of we're not totally rebuilding, but we need to find the right pieces to go with the guys who are playing well now. And if we don't do that, we could fall off a cliff. If we don't have the quarterback answer, nothing's going to happen, no matter how good this defense is. If we don't have wide receivers who can actually play the position, we're not going to be contending. So I think the Patriots are going to be in that phase at least for the next few years. Probably not as long as the Buffalo Bills went through it, but New England and the Jets and Miami are all in that state.
Yeah, that's a really great point. That mediocrity, limbo holding pattern, whatever you want to go with, was just the worst. Always
we were so good at 7-9,
7-9 or 8-8 or 6-10, and just always being in pick 8 to 14 range when it was like, oh, well, the top 5 guys, the prospects in this year's draft are amazing. And then everyone else was a crapshoot. And it was like, sweet, I guess we got Aaron Mabin now. Hooray.
Eric Wood even talked about it this offseason, that looking back, that season they started 0-8 or 0-9, where, we were real bad. And then they rattled off some of those wins at the end of the year. You realize that he said, you would never do it. When people talk about tanking, NFL players will never, ever tank. It's not possible. This is such a short window of time. Every snap of film matters for your next contract. But teams sometimes can make decisions to sit players, to IR players, to do those things. Franchises can make decisions. So he said you could never do that. But those couple wins that they scrambled at the end of the year with Fitzmagic ended up being the reason that we got Marcel Darius instead of Cam Newton or Von Miller. Right. That was the one year that we were genuinely bad enough to have it really matter. There were 2 generational talents at the top of that draft, and we got Marcel Darius. And don't get me wrong,
still even had a shot at Cam, and then he had that pro day that was like the greatest pro day ever, and I was like, great, well, he's gonna go top 2, and it's over for us.
So it just we were the comment from Mike was hysterical. We were so bad that we sucked at losing. We couldn't even lose right. So yeah, luckily we won't have to worry about that anymore, and we'll have a nice stretch here of good fun football.
And that's such a good point with everything to wrap up. Changing the guard there is that it looks like the Bills are going to be favorites for some years to come, but at the very least, there is no guarantee, to Anthony's point of, well, the Pats are going to come in first. We'll see if one of us can get a wild card, or maybe, both wild cards, or 3 now can come out of the division. We'll see what happens. There's that changing the guard now, that where not only are the Bills projected to be towards the top, but it's so open compared to years past. And if it's not open, it's because the Bills are favorited to the point that it could kind of be theirs, which is a really cool thing and goes with that fandom perspective. And it's fun and it's exciting. As we move towards our last topic here, and we're going to start with Greg because he's been in massive debates online about playoff.
A lot of people fighting me.
Yeah, he's in a lot of comment wars with Bills fans, Ravens fans, a whole slew of conversations that he's engaging in. Playoff seeding for the Bills. Obviously, again, the Bills have won the AFC East. They get a home game. As of now, we sit in the 2 seed. What's the seeding you're hoping for? We'll all go around and kind of say who we're hoping to face in the first round. We spoke about this actually, ironically, on an episode of the Hoof podcast several weeks ago, back when the playoff seeding was a little more blurry and not as concrete and well-defined. But now that we got some more clarity to the picture, Greg, we'll start with you, since you have been such a staunch defender of practicality and logistics, as you should be and as we all should be. Playoff seeding for the Bills.
So there's 2 things I want to say to clarify, and I've said this to a handful of people online. I think the Buffalo Bills can beat every team in football. I think it's smart to want the best path through the playoffs. Both those things can be true. I'm not afraid of any team. I'm not ducking any team. I'm not trying to make sure we don't play a certain team. But if I have a choice, I'd rather have the better path through the playoffs with a higher likelihood of moving forward. So everything I'm about to say is simply that this is the better path with the more likely outcome of winning. So I would prefer to play any of the 2 teams playing right now. So anybody that's not that's using a dual screen and watching this amazing Raiders-Dolphins game while you're listening to us, I'd love to play either of those 2 teams. So that's my priority, is finding a path to play a team that I'm not as concerned about. We just smoke the crap out of Pittsburgh. I'd love to find a way to play them again.
Cool, that'd be great.
I'm not concerned about it with the offense that we have, but if there is a flaw in this team, it's been run defense. So some of those teams like Tennessee and Baltimore and Cleveland, if I have a choice of not playing one of them, I'd rather not, just because if something weird happens with some weird turnovers and they get a lead and they start leaning into a run game, that's a harder matchup to be able to go through. I still think we'd outscore them and be able to come back and do it, but I'd rather not have to deal with that. So I laid out a scenario where this week the Bills' rooting interest should be the Bills win, Green Bay beats Tennessee, Indianapolis beats Pittsburgh. That locks up the number 2 seed for the Bills. Staying on the opposite side of the bracket from Kansas City matters. Facing them in the AFC Championship game, I think, is our best case scenario. And then I laid out an additional step where if Miami wins out here and Cleveland wins the AFC North, it knocks Baltimore completely out of the playoffs, which if you can knock any hot team out and not have to worry about that, the Bills would then play Miami in the first round of the playoffs, which would be fantastic. And so we'd lock up the number 2 seed, have our own bye week where we could rest every starter. If anyone hasn't read it, Joe Biscaglia listed out how they could elevate every practice squad player and sit like 21 starters from the game and literally have like a bye week, and then be able to go through and have Miami play Matt Barkley in the backups, and hopefully they scrap their way through that. But then we would be able to come back and they'd have to make back-to-back trips from Miami up to Buffalo, with having to show all of their film and all of their play calls to win a game that matters to them while we're just scouting and taking notes, and then play them again. So that's my best case scenario, is that we play a team like Miami and be able to move forward and then play the winner of, say, Indy and Cleveland or Pittsburgh and Cleveland, and then have Tennessee, Indianapolis, Baltimore on the other side of the bracket with Kansas City, give them as hard of a game as possible, maybe knock them off, and then the Bills host 3 straight home playoff games. That's why seeding like that matters. So for all the fans who yell at me as soon as I put those things out there, I'm not afraid of anybody. We can beat anybody. It's fine. Me too. I'm right there with you. But if I can choose, I'd rather pick my own path.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Anthony, what do you got?
Before the Pittsburgh loss last week, I was arguing with people because they were saying the Bills should rest their starters if they have the 3 seed locked up. And
I saw that.
Yeah. And I was just I was livid. I'm like, this is common sense. If you can improve your position, you do it. Period.
Yes.
And they were like, no, home field advantage doesn't matter. I'm like, yeah, I don't care what anybody says.
Sleeping in your
Playing
own
on the
bed,
field.
not
Yeah,
having to
exactly.
travel. That
Oh
stuff
my
matters.
God. It's common sense. You play where you know how the light shines in that stadium. You don't have to travel to get to that stadium. It's all of that stuff really does matter. It's just a small advantage that could go in your favor, regardless of how anything else is going, with or without fans. But now that we do have the 2 seed in our possession, and unless something crazy happens, it doesn't look like we're going to give it up. So what matters is the down half of the bracket now. Who's going to make it in for the Bills to play at the 2 seed? Because obviously the 2 seed plays the 7 seed. So whoever squeaks in is going to be the one that goes to Buffalo for this game. Right now, I think my picks mirror to what Greg said, except that I don't have the confidence in Cleveland to win the division. I think that the Steelers still win the division, which would keep them, I believe, at the 3 seed, although Tennessee might be able to sneak in to the 3 seed if they both win their final 2 games. Yeah, if one of them, if the Steelers lose one and Tennessee wins both of theirs, Tennessee would be the 3 seed, and Pittsburgh would be the 4 seed. That's my ideal scenario, I think, because if those 4 teams make it, then the 1 would play the 4 and the 2 would play the 3. I would rather that be Pittsburgh than Tennessee. So Tennessee is the one team I'm trying to avoid. At least in that first phase, like Greg said, I'm not afraid of anybody. Bring them to Buffalo and let's see what they can do again versus us when we're healthy and 100% and preparing to play them. My number 1 team, definitely Miami. You gotta, if we could play Miami, that would be the shoe-in. Yes, please throw that rookie quarterback in that team that isn't quite to the level that this Bills team is right at us. The second team I would love to play is Indy, just because I feel like that matchup is great for us because a quarterback like Phillip Rivers, who cannot be mobile in the cold, in Buffalo, in our defense, getting after it the way we do against the pass. They have a good run game, but I think we could easily take care of that. I think we match up best versus those 2 teams. Cleveland would be the next one. I think that, I don't trust Baker Mayfield. I don't trust that team at all. I don't think they're as good. They've beaten up bad teams, and they've won barely a couple of good games, right?
That secondary can't handle these receivers.
Exactly, and they can't go up against what our strengths are. Even if their running backs do well in that game, which obviously we would be ready for the run too, but I still think Cleveland is a team that we can beat there. And the other team, the team that I don't want to play then is Tennessee. I wouldn't want to play them in the first round. I feel like that's the worst of the possible matchups.
Fair. Sterling, what do you got?
I mean, you guys just broke it down pretty extensively. Okay, there's not much for us to say, but I will add this. Tennessee is probably the strongest team that I would say to give the Bills the most trouble, just because you can't just take away one side of the ball, like one aspect of their offense. They can run it, they can throw it, right? There's not another team in the AFC that I could put in that category. Kansas City, can they run it? Now Clyde Edwards-Helaire he's going to be injured. He's going to be a pitch count even when he comes back. Le'Veon Bell doesn't have what he used to have. So they're going to be strictly straight for the pass, right? There's not another team that I can say that is balanced enough to be able to keep the Bills on their heels. I think Tennessee is probably the only team that can really give them fits. Lamar Jackson, great, he can run, but anything outside the numbers, he ain't hitting, or down the seam. We got 2 of the best safeties in the league. So I don't think Baltimore, if anything, the Bills gave the blueprint on how to beat the Ravens last year.
Yes.
Right? So yes. I think that I just think that the Bills, if you want an opportunity to get to the Super Bowl, I've never in my entire life watching the Bills. I mean, there's not many instances we can say this, but where how do you not make it to the AFC Championship game? Like, I just don't understand how you don't make it unless Josh Allen just completely just brain farts and doesn't know how to, find his own butt crack. I don't understand how you do not get to the AFC Championship game. Like, you have some prime opportunities, and Sean McDermott has grown as a leader and as a coach to where he just look at the second half adjustments that they made. Right at the beginning of the season, okay, you say, well, it may be some issues, but it's gotten so much better throughout the course of the season. I think those are the fine details that, as fans with a rooting interest, those are the things we have to look at. Like, how good is your coaching staff in adversity? And the Houston game was a perfect teacher for Sean McDermott and that coaching staff on how to battle adversity. It was perfect. You had a game, you had a 16-0 game, and we took our foot off the gas, and look what happened, right? Yeah. So they're going to learn from that. Sean McDermott has shown that they learn from their mistakes. With that being said, you look at the offense, how they're playing, look at the defense, how they're playing, and the matchup-wise, I just don't see how you don't make it to the AFC title game at least.
Yeah, it's that weird moment of looking yourself in the mirror and we're better than that team. We're better than this team. We're better than you should win this game, period. And
it's right. NFL. It's NFL, right?
Anything can happen in playoffs. I think that's what I'm most excited for this team. Is playoffs is a totally new story, as we've seen the last two appearances for the Bills making the playoffs. But this year it's different. We've played a lot of really good teams, and we're ready to face teams like this. And this team does well in adversity, and we trust them. If Josh Allen has the ball in the fourth quarter and needs to score, he's going to score, right? And I think it's that mentality that is just different for this team, and that's why it is the moment of you should make it to the AFC Championship game, if not higher.
I think that's the big takeaway from the whole playoff seeding aspect is the expectations that we have, whether it's making it at least to the AFC Championship game or at the bare minimum, which is making it to the Final Four of the AFC and getting at least one win. But I think that there's reasonable expectation to see the Bills making the AFC Championship game. But regardless of how good you think the Bills are, it is completely acceptable and completely fine to still want the easiest path and the path of least resistance. I think we all can easily agree on that. And as much as we would love to be able to beat the Chiefs and make a statement, we were talking about this offline before the episode started. I'd love a playoff scenario where the Chiefs are eliminated. And
let the Titans beat them.
Yeah,
let the Titans beat them.
Fantastic. Give me that scenario. And I think we're all aligned to a pretty large degree on who we'd like to see. And again, as Anthony, as you mentioned, it's all matchup based. There are certain aspects that every team brings. You know what? I think we all universally would like to see Miami in the first round or the Raiders by some chance if that lucked out, being able to see one of those teams. And every other team has advantages and disadvantages, whether it's Baltimore, whether it's Indianapolis, whether it's Pittsburgh, Cleveland, everybody in the entire conference. But the best aspect of it is the Bills do some really good things, and they do those really good things really well and operate at a high level to the point where we're sitting here talking about like, okay, how does this team match up against us, and where do we look like against Cleveland's running game and against Indianapolis? But there's a lot that all the other teams have to come and be like, oh crap, how do we match up against Josh Allen? Can we cover Stephon Diggs? There's
no secondary in the NFL that can cover our wide receivers, period.
Fantastic point. And I mentioned it on Twitter a couple of nights ago. John Brown's about to come back, and the Bills' offense is better. I think the narrative has been kind of put to bed that the Bills' offense struggles without John Brown. No disrespect to John Brown. The Bills have shown that they can succeed in a high-level fashion without him. But regardless of that, adding him back is a tremendous weaponry piece added to the offense. The running game is starting to click to the point where we're not running the ball heavily, but we've shown that when we need to run the ball, we can. And having that as a complement to Josh Allen in the passing offense, which is, to Greg's point, is almost uncoverable in the NFL. Now we're looking at the point of all these other teams have to be like, yeah, okay, how do we match up against Stephon Diggs? Okay, if we double cover Diggs, what do we do with John Brown one-on-one? Do we have anybody that can cover Cole Beasley in the slot?
Let's drop back into some zone and hope that Cole Beasley doesn't find the open spot in the zone.
No, you can't. And with what we're going to be able to do it's exciting to even just having this talk. Someone threw it up in the comments earlier of, the fun thing is not having to do like math crunching scenarios, figuring out like, okay, if these 4 teams lose and this happens, we can make it and do this. We're having a conversation of like, okay, who do we want to face and when so we can get to a Super Bowl? That's awesome.
I went on 2 Patriots shows this past week and told them if they need any tips on like mock draft simulators or things like that. I know some really, really good ones. Because I'm used to pivoting at this time of year into like, well, I'm not a huge college football guy. So I always have to, I'm like the guy who skipped all the classes and just shows up like the week before the final and copies the notes off of everybody else. So I would always get ready for that and be like, all right, here, let me figure out who's good coming out in the draft. And now I'm going to be even worse because I'm not even going to start paying attention until February. So going through all of this, I told him, I'm like, I'm used to like starting my draft work around now. So if you guys need some tips, I'll point out some good guys you guys can pay attention to as you get into.
They're watching all the bowl games, right? They watched all the bowl games that started this weekend. They're scouting already.
So
guys.
funny. I love college football, and I'm huge into the draft, and a lot of it is just because I like college football. Well, there's a decent chunk of it because it was always like, well, I know the Bills are going to need a good draft pick, so I got to do my studying, I got to get ready. And now I'm watching bowl games and watching college football more like, okay, is this guy going to be available at the back end of the first round? Oh, no. Okay, then, like, because the Bills are going to be picking in the back end of the first round, which is an unreal thought and perspective to have.
Awesome.
And, yeah, there's so much playoff seeding talk and who we match up with and how we match up. And it's fun. It's an exciting time. And this whole episode has been fun. This whole episode has been a good time. I want to thank every single one of you guys for joining this show, Sterling, Greg, and Anthony. If anybody listening or watching has not jumped onto the Hoof podcast to see the work that Sterling and Anthony do, and another Eric B, they are phenomenal, putting out multiple shows a week, a great mix of hilarity and comedy, but also quality content and analysis and Bill stuff, but stuff from around the league, just great stuff. And Anthony's suit is immaculate as always. So just for the suit alone, you need to be watching it. And then Greg on the Cover One podcast with Aaron every single week, giving you the preview going into game week and then the recap the day of after the games. Just amazing stuff on Cover One as a whole. I'm tremendously thankful for you guys being able to join me on this episode tonight.
It's a lot of fun, man.
Yeah,
thanks,
dude.
Always.
I'm glad. If you guys want to, let's say, Sterling, we'll start with you. If you guys want to drop your socials and all that kind of stuff so the good people can know where to find you.
Oh, dude, and I have to add, like, we're a family at Cover One, man. This is what we do. Like, it's not a big deal to go on each other's shows and so forth. But yeah, you can find me at Furrow Sterling on Twitter. I'm always there. Greg is more popular he's so I'm just there. I just comment and like, hey, I'm here. But Greg is the guy on that. So
no, you guys can find me at Greg Thompsett, GregTompsett. Come and check out the preview and post game shows. I promise I'm worth tolerating Aaron for.
Oh, he's not even here to defend himself, but yeah.
It's always the best way.
And you can find me at Anthony Romeo NY on Twitter, always interacting, always posting stuff. Check out the video if you haven't seen it of when we went to greet the team here in Denver at the stadium and McDermott came out. I pinned it on my Twitter, so it should be right up there. What an awesome moment for us. Yeah.
Awesome. Greg, when you were going through and spelling your name, the sounding of like the P and the T and the rhythm you had, it was very reminiscent of like the BEAGGRESSIVE. There are a lot of rhythms to it. I like that.
I've said it a lot of times, so now it just kind of rolls out.
So good flow to it. I, of course, am Anthony, host here on Disguise Coverage. Find me on Twitter at pro__ant. That's pro_ANT. Thank you very much to you guys for joining me on tonight's episode. Thank you to everybody for the comments. Appreciate it. The comments were fantastic. Everything was blowing up. Thank you to anybody watching or listening to this episode live or checking it out later. Happy holidays to everybody. We'll see you next week. Go Bills. Enjoy the new year. Enjoy the Christmas time. And have a good night.
Go Bills.